Hello, my name is Willie Briscoe, and I attend North Coast Calvary Chapel along with my family. I serve in the ministry of Hope Leadership Academy, which mentors and works with inner city kids that come from fatherless homes, and have served alongside with many of you in our congregation, meeting the needs of those families. I get the opportunity through a Daily Hope to share through Ezekiel 46 this morning. And after last couple of weeks of just reading over this passage, the word over the banner of this passage to me just came across as worship. Ezekiel, through the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, would be giving the children of Israel, be giving the God's people instruction on how to enter into the tabernacle, how to enter into a place of worship for God. And the details are amazing, that God would give so many details about the amounts of the offerings and the direction in which people entering should enter and exit. And it just kind of, for me, it really just impressed upon my heart how important it is for me to enter into worship with the Lord. The first most important thing that is said in Ezekiel 46 is, Ezekiel 46:1 said, "This is what the sovereign Lord says." And then Ezekiel goes on to give these instructions to the people. In giving these instructions, another powerful thing that stood out in my heart is the prince is mentioned over and over again here as the leader. And the prince has to go in before, and he has to go in the same direction, and he has to lead, and then he has to lead the people in, and then he has to lead the people out of the tabernacle. And we have a Prince of Peace that never leaves us, never forsakes us. And this is a foreshadowing of that Prince that would lead us into worship, be in worship with us. And then when we leave the church, we don't leave God behind. We take Jesus with us. We continue on with the Prince on into our daily lives. The parts of the tabernacle, as the people would go through, they had very specific areas. And the tabernacle itself had very specific parts to it. There's the outer chamber, the inner chamber, and then the holiest of holies. And the process that you would go through this would determine, or God would determine, the process in which you would walk through and give your offerings, give your prayers, and everything else. And we know from biblical history that if the priest and the leaders didn't do things right, we know that they were condemned to death. We are thankful today that if we don't purify our hearts before we walk into a place of worship, that death does not come and take us. But there is another kind of death. There's a spiritual death. And as we continue to maybe go to a place of worship and bring ourselves into a place of worship, apart from being rightly related to God, apart from consecrating ourselves, apart from really taking worship serious, there is a spiritual death that happens over time. And we've all seen believers who have had that happen in their lives. It goes continued on in verse 10. Once again, I'll read that for you. The prince is to be among them, going in when they go in and going out when they go out. And once again, that's just that beautiful picture to me of the Prince of Peace that doesn't leave us. He goes into worship with us, he's in worship with us, and then he leaves with worship. He leaves us in worship. The other thing that really stood out to me about is the gifts and the offerings that were given. God was really specific about the offerings, some of the offerings. And then the other offerings, he was very specific in saying, you should give whatever you want. And as we come into a place of worship, as we come to church on the weekends, we've all heard of a tithe, and I would say that that's the bare minimum. But we ought to come with a heart of giving God whatever he wants, and God says he loves a cheerful giver. There's the Bible breaks down, Ezekiel breaks down in four major areas. And why is that important? Because the last part of this passage, the last part of the chapters of Ezekiel has to do with the restoration of Israel. And what we see is that part of restoration is worshiping God in the right way, where the word is read, and people are giving, they're being confessing their sins. All the different offerings were for specific sins that that God was going to overlook for a time being until Christ went to the cross. But we ought to have that same mentality when we go into a church, into our church settings. We ought to have the mentality that we're going to consecrate ourselves. We're going to go in with a heart of asking for forgiveness about anything and everything, even on behalf of our family. And then we're going to come with a heart of giving and sacrificing and giving because God gave us. And that is a weekly picture of restoration in our lives. But I think it's a bigger picture of the restoration that God did on mankind. So as you go into your worship this week, maybe keep this in mind. I hope it's encouraging to know that Jesus goes with us. He leaves the church with us. He comes with us and he leaves with us. That our hearts and our desire is to give above and beyond. And then at the same time, that we want to go in making sure that we are asking for forgiveness and having a clean slate before God. Enjoy your week.